want to talk today about marinade. You remember perhaps in your meat eating days, helping your mom or dad at the grill, soaking the meat in something. So now we soak tofu. We marinate our tofu. You're supposed to marinate your tempeh. I don't know if we do. But the point of the marinade is to mix up this super flavorful sauce, and then you put your tofu in, and it soaks up the flavor of the marinade, right? We get that concept. So I've also been thinking lately about how that analogy is so true of our mind. How, the human mind gets marinated in certain flavors and we soak those up, and that becomes how we view the world, how we think about the world, how we move in the world. And that's basically what conditioning is when we talk about being conditioned, at least, in a really kind of superficial way. So from day one in our families, we're immediately starting to be marinated in our family's values, our family's habits, our family's ways of expressing things. Maybe you notice similarities in your families, like I don't look like my mother at all, but I talk like her. Like, you couldn't tell the difference on the phone. So those kinds of things that you soak up. So this happens throughout our whole life. And the reason this came to me is that somebody mentioned to me recently a study that was really interesting. It was done by these two political scientists, David Bruckman from the University of California, Berkeley, and Joshua Calla from Yale University. And they did a study on Fox News viewers. The name of their study is The Impacts of Selective Partisan Media Exposure. So they say in their synopsis at the beginning, using data on actual TV viewership from a media company, we recruited a sample of regular Fox News viewers and incentivized a random subset to watch CNN News instead for a month. And despite that regular Fox viewers are largely strong partisans, we found that watching CNN instead produced substantial learning and moderated their attitudes. Okay, so here's the story. They found 304 people, and they paid them $15 an hour. So they were highly incentivized to watch it, up to 7 hours of CNN during the week. It's only 7 hours. It's not like you could only exclusively watch CNN, but to watch 7 hours of CNN during a month in September 2020. At the end of that period, the researchers found some of the Fox News watchers had changed their minds on a whole range of key issues, including their response to the coronavirus and this idea of Democrats' attitudes to police. Like one of the questions I think they had at that time was that somehow Democrats rejoiced every time somebody shot a policeman, right? That was the belief that had been perpetrated on their news source. And after watching CNN for a month, that belief lessened tremendously. So, that was fascinating, right? It's really worth looking at the study. There's a lot of conclusion from there. But the point is that we marinate our mind in these certain views or these certain attitudes, and it influences how we think. But with just 1 month of exposure to a broader perspective, there were changes in the views of those 304 viewers. They all maintained their political party affiliation, and nobody was completely transformed. But their minds were changed. So that suggests this kind of malleability, both from what we get soaked with, and also how we can change easily, really, depending on what we're exposed to. So another example for me is that for 14 or 15 years, we've been teaching a Monday night meditation class. It started out at the Spokane Unitarian Universalist Church, where we were up until COVID, and now that group is continuing on Zoom. We never put it out as this is a Buddhist training class. We're still not a Buddhist class. Most of the people who attend, some have deepened their relationship and become Buddhists themselves, but most of the people are not. And yet, when we talk with them, I just had an opportunity to talk with someone this last week who's been in the class for years, they are so conversant in the Buddhist worldview, understanding about how to cultivate compassion, how to start working with their minds around antidoting anger, developing the equanimity with regard to this person is just like me and only wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. That's part of what's guiding their lives through marinating in these kind of beneficial ways of thinking. So it just shows me, again, it reinforces for me how important it is to pay attention to what we're marinating our minds in. So those of us here, of course, we are swimming in a soup, a spicy, spicy soup of wonderful influences that help to support our mind, but we can still look at, what's actually marinating internally. Am I marinating in resentment, or am I marinating in tolerance or love? Am I marinating in victim thinking, or am I marinating in blame, or am I marinating my mind in compassion? So, am I craving, or am I cultivating contentment? Are we marinating in the impermanent nature of things? Are we grasping things and, flip out every time something changes? It's, the external influences are important. And then as we get deeper and deeper in adopting what we learn externally, how we internalize is how we ourselves are marinating our own minds. And we're the only ones that can do anything about that, but to pay attention and notice, know the antidotes, and change it. So this is a bit of a plug for our winter retreat, or our winter retreat from afar. Because when we do these meditations on cultivating the mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of phenomena, we get much more careful and aware about what's happening in the mind so that we can respond more quickly, so that these automatic habits that we have are not overcoming us too much. So that's really all I want to say, is to talk about this marinade thing. I don't know what we marinated for lunch, but to really pay attention to what's going on in our minds and I guess appreciate. Sometimes you think it's so subtle. It's just easy to override it. But to bring back to our awareness the depth of understanding that what we, first of all, expose ourselves to, how we spend our external lifetime, what we hear, what we read, what we think about. This is one of the things that's in that list of 6 factors that stimulate the afflictions, right? Well, we can also be careful to have that be something that stimulates our virtuous state of mind, that same thing. And to be super aware as we get more and more versed in deliberately putting ourselves in situations where we get the external flavors, to pay attention to what we're doing internally too, so that more and more as we practice over time, our internal speech, our internal flow is in alignment with the direction that we want to go. So whatever spices you're putting in, enjoy our lunch. I contemplate